It's the real news. I'm Aaron Mate. We're talking about immigration. President Trump has signed an executive order that ends his family separation policy. But in doing so, he's trying to return to the status quo ante, a family incarceration policy. We're talking about this with Juliane Hing, immigration correspondent for The Nation magazine, and Denise, researcher for refugee and migrant rights at Amnesty International. So I want to start by going to a clip of Brian Kilmeade. He is a Fox News host, and this is him speaking about the children who were detained.
We just can't let everybody in that wants to be here. And these are not, like it or not, these aren't our kids. Show them compassion. But it's not like he's doing this to the people of Idaho or Texas. These are people from another country, and now people are saying that they're more important than people in our country who are paying taxes who have needs as well.
That was Brian Kilmeade of Fox News. So Juliane Hing, there was so many clips that we could have chosen to illustrate the level of discourse that's been coming from circles like Fox News in recent weeks about immigration. But I'm just wondering your thoughts on what we've heard from right-wing pundits and politicians when it comes to immigrants during this crisis that has just erupted over these recent weeks.
Yeah, I do think that this crisis has laid bare the utter heartlessness with which so many politicians and pundits consider this topic of immigration, but more than immigration, just basic human rights. The thing that has been so misguided actually about the Trump administration's approach is Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, has lately been walking back from this, but had repeatedly said that they were pursuing the zero tolerance policy, which is to say a prosecute everyone policy, as a way to deter people from trying to cross into the United States. But multiple studies have shown that there's actually very little correlation between border enforcement, between the militarization of the border and flows of people coming. The fact is that many of the people who are coming from Central America and three major countries in particular, Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, are fleeing for their lives. And so, people are coming to the border, following what is actually their right under U.S. law to present themselves and ask to be given an opportunity to apply for asylum, are being now treated as if they're garbage. This idea that these children are other people's children, no, actually, they're all of our children. These are just very, very, very young children, and it doesn't matter their nationality. The fact is that they're here, and there are basic rights that our country affords them, and all of that is being is being washed away.
But Juliane, let me ask you, the counter argument that we've heard from the Trump administration and right-wing pundits is that these immigrants, asylum seekers, are not presenting themselves at authorized ports of entry. They're trying to cross illegally.
Well, actually, so people who are waiting to present themselves at official ports of entry have also been denied entry to the United States. There was a large caravan of people who were traveling from Central America through Mexico to present themselves at the border at an official port of entry to plead for asylum, and many of them were turned away or told to wait, and so even people who are following exactly the letter of the law, which is come to an official port of entry, are being mistreated and are being told that there's no room for them here. But part of the reason why Border Patrol facilities and border detention centers are so full up, leave to the side for a second the fact of why the government is locking people up anyway. The reason why these detention centers are so full is because the United States, under the zero tolerance policy, has decided to criminally prosecute even people who were crossing to the border for the first time, and that is a misdemeanor offense. There's this concept of prosecutorial discretion. A cop can see you jaywalking across the street and decide not to ticket you, in the same way that the United States can choose what they want to put their limited resources towards. And right now, the Trump administration is saying that they want to put the full force of the law into prosecuting people who have all they've ever done. Many of these people have never been to the United States and have no other history here. Is to slap them with criminal prosecution.
Right. So, which speaks to the criminalization of immigration. Those trying to come here have been basically penalized for it. Denise Bell, if you could pick up on that, when did this practice, this attitude of criminalizing people who've tried to enter before, really escalate?
Well, we do know that, as you know, under the Obama administration, that was the policy for what was called the surge in 2014 of families and unaccompanied children who came to the border and asked for asylum. And that was a deterrence-based policy seeking to punish people for coming here. And the courts really pushed back, and Obama walked that back, though did not stop the policy of family detention. This has always been a trend, but it's really been the focus here under this administration to undermine the right to seek asylum, but also the right to seek asylum under US law. It's not just international law, by criminalizing it, by punishing people, whether they come to a port of entry or they cross between a port of entry. They are doing nothing wrong. They are asking for asylum, which the US law says very clearly does not have to be done at a port of entry. And so this is part of a whole, what we would say, the closing of the borders, whether it's slowing down refugee admissions, whether it is undermining the asylum system. What we see is a concerted effort to attack these systems of protection.
In terms of international law, Denise, let me ask you finally. Juliane before mentioned the three countries that have been the primary source for this surge of people trying to escape persecution, repression, violence. And they are El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala. Anybody who knows 20th century and recent history knows that these countries have been major targets of US destabilization efforts. Backing right-wing governments, right-wing death squads. Amnesty has certainly documented many of the atrocities there. I'm wondering if Amnesty has a position on whether or not there is a legal or moral obligation on the part of the US to welcome people who are fleeing countries that it has destabilized. I mean, Honduras even there was a coup there in 2009 that the US administration under Obama supported.
Well, that's an excellent question. What I can say is that the US has a moral obligation, as any country does, to offer asylum and protection and make sure that people are not harmed. And also, we do have a responsibility for many of the humanitarian crises in the world, and in which we might have contributed. Yemen, for example, some of our policies have contributed to the suffering there. In terms of Central America, Amnesty has documented what the US has done there, but also how the governments in those countries are creating such conditions of persecution and insecurity, people have no choice to flee. So it's the responsibility of those countries, and it is the responsibility of the US and of Mexico to offer safe passage to people who are fleeing for asylum.
We'll leave it there. My guests have been Juliane Hing, immigration correspondent for The Nation magazine, and Denise Bell, researcher for refugee and migrant rights at Amnesty International. Thanks to you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you for joining us on The Real News.